Hey guys, in today's video, I'm going to show you how to make your makeup last all summer long throughout the heat. If you take any tips from today's video, please have it be this one. Wear your sunscreen. I don't care if you don't wear makeup often or even if you work indoors, you really should be wearing sunscreen all throughout the summer and really all year. I have some of my favorites here that I've been loving. I find that all of these work really well underneath makeup. I haven't had any issues pilling, so I highly suggest any of these, but really any sunscreen will do. And be honest with yourself. If you're not going to wear sunscreen, then opt for makeup that has sunscreen or like a tinted sunscreen. I've been seeing a lot of blushes that have sunscreen in it, which I think is so genius because you put it on the high points of your face. That tends to be where we get burnt. So really just please wear your sunscreen this summer. So I already put a layer on. The one that I've currently been loving is the Trader Joe's Daily Facial Sunscreen. Next up, you're going to want a gripping primer. The one that I've been loving is the e.l.f. Power Grip Primer. I use this if I'm going to be using liquid foundation or a liquid concealer. So we're going to do half my face with primer because the next step is powder versus liquid, and I just want to show you the differences. And you really don't need that much. I love a good gripping primer because you know your makeup's going to last all day long. So this side will be the side that I'm doing liquid foundation. And then the other side, I'm going to do a powder foundation. And you do want it to dry a little bit. I do this with all of my primers. Just give it a second to sink into your skin, and it's going to help with that gripping for the next product. While we wait for this side to dry, on this side, we're going to do powder foundation. And another product that I love for this summer is any type of stain product. So one of my favorites is the benetint stain, and this is the original, and I love this as blush and as my lip product. It stains for the whole day and it has a nice gradual fade to it, so we're going to do that first before we apply the powder foundation. And I like this one because you don't have to work as fast with it. I've seen reviews for the dupe for it. I think it was Essence that did it, and it stained people instantly if you don't work with it right away. And I like to build this one up, especially because we're going to be putting powder foundation over it, but I do try and avoid that area just so that we can still have the blush coming through. I also really love the smell of this product. It's so subtle, but it just has a nice rose scent to it. So on your lips, it does need a second to dry. It really does last all day for me. I also love to pair it underneath another lip product so that when that one fades, I still have something on my lips and I don't have to reapply as much. I'll go in with the liquid foundation first just to show you this side, and then we can start doing the powder on this side. So the one that I'm currently using is the Sephora Best Skin Ever foundation. This one leaves a soft matte finish, which I really like for the summer, especially when we sweat and we tend to get a bit oilier. And this foundation is a bit thicker, so I prefer to go in with a beauty blender to blend it out. And then I find that foundations that are thinner, I want to use a brush to get as much coverage as possible with it. So that already gave us a ton of coverage. I'm loving how it looks, and that gripping primer is really just going to make it last all day long. If you want more coverage, I would suggest a serum type concealer. That way it looks a little dewier. I just find that they're less likely to crease throughout the day. But I really do love the coverage of this foundation, so we're going to be done with the base on this side, and then we can start adding powder on this side. And the current powder foundation that I've been using is the Bareminerals Original. and I have the shade medium 10. And I love the ease and ability to reapply throughout the day. So I just pour a little bit in the cap like that, and then I take flat blending brush, and then I kind of swirl it in there and then tap off the excess into the cap. And that way you're not putting too much on your brush, and then you can always build it up. So then I just tap. And then with this, you really just need to keep buffing it into the skin. The more you buff it, the better it's gonna look. And this one looks so gorgeous on the skin. It leaves such a soft finish that I just love so much. And you really don't need a whole lot, I've noticed. I did it one time where I put way too much, and you could kind of tell that it was too much. So really just start slow with this. And then when you get to the cheek area, depending on how much of that blush you want peeking through, just kind of tap around it. I love a really strong blush, so we'll do that part last. And you can just buff slowly around it. I like to do it when there's less product on the brush. That way I'm not completely covering up my blush. We're done with the foundation, and I really love that it looks the same on both sides. I mean, we don't have blush on this side, but the finish really does look the same. I do notice that on the side where I did powder versus liquid, the liquid kind of like settled more into some pores, kind of like in my nose and cheek area, which I'm fine with. We are gonna add powder and a setting spray later to this side. It kind of just depends if you would prefer like one step that you might have to reapply throughout the day versus a few steps, but you know it's gonna last all day. It really is just up to you what you want to do. I do like showing different options so that you can pick, and possibly you might have some of these products already. We are going to go on to the next step, and after this step I prefer to use powders versus more liquids. I've just noticed, especially in the summertime, if I use a cream blush or a liquid blush, it just kind of fades throughout the day, and it might not have as like a punch as when I first applied it. Versus like the stain, that's gonna last all day. It might slowly fade, but it's just such a nice gradual fade. Whereas with creams, I notice that like if I'm working out or if I get really sweaty throughout the day, the cream kind of just like tends to melt off my face. It's kind of gross. So I like to continue with powders at this step. So one tip that really helps level up my makeup game is if you're using a powder on top of a liquid, go with a setting powder first, just a very light layer. It's gonna help your blushes and bronzers blend better because it's not sticking to a tacky layer, but rather you already have the powder layer there. So it's a really nice gradual transition and it blends really well. I have a few powders that I love. I don't know, this year I have been obsessing over powders. It's just been like the new product that I've been loving. But for a setting powder, we're gonna go with the Mercier translucent setting powder. And again, I just tap some into the cap and then I swirl my brush into it. This one, you definitely need a bit more because it is that translucent powder versus the other one, it's the foundation. But I just swirl my brush, and I've noticed the bigger the brush, the better. And then I just pat it off again into the lid just to get rid of the excess. And then we're gonna put the powder on areas that we're gonna be putting powder on. Pat it in like this. If you were to like bake your face after, that's when you wanna go with like a thicker one and then you can swipe it away. But I'm really just patting it in right now. If there are other areas that you want to mattify down, like for me, I tend to do the bridge of my nose and then kind of the center of my forehead. Those are the spots that I get the oiliest throughout the day, so I'm just gonna put a little bit of powder there. But on this side where we did a powder foundation, you do not need to put a setting powder on top, which is really nice. So I'm just gonna put a lip oil on top of my lips because the stain does make them a little dry. It's like once you put another product on top, it doesn't look as dry even when that fades away. So I'm just gonna put a little bit of lip oil. Like I said, we're gonna go in with a powder blush. So I just swirl my brush in there like that. And then I actually like to tap off the excess on my hand because it kind of helps blend it within the bristles. It might seem like a waste of product, but I feel like it's very minimal and it kind of saves you a step where if you have too much, you don't have to go in with a concealer or foundation to cover it up. So I feel like in the long run, tapping it off in your hand is the way you're losing the least amount of product. So at first I tap in my blush, and then if I do want more, I'm going to kind of like tap and then swirl it. And because we put that powder first, it kind of creates a barrier and it's not going to lift up the foundation underneath. So I love a very bright punchy blush. I think it's very cute. I just love the look of blush. When I was a kid, I always thought like blush made you look like a clown. And then so for years after that, I never wore blush, and I would just put foundation and like mascara. And sorry, it's 4th of July, so you can probably hear fireworks right now. And so I never used it. And then all of a sudden I was like, I love blush so much. And like, I always wear blush now. So I did do the placement a little different. I like drape it across my face, whereas this side I kind of just did right here. All right, and then for bronzer, I'm gonna do it on both sides, and we're using powder for both. And I actually really love this brush. I think it's great for setting powder and for powder bronzer. I'm thinking of getting another one just because I use it for setting powder and bronzer. All right, we're done with bronzer. And again, I love how both sides are looking the same. I was a little nervous about that. I've never done like half and half, so I'm really happy about that. And so if you did want more powder on this side, you definitely can. It can get a little dry, but if you have oilier skin or you know that you're gonna sweat more, I would definitely pack on the powder. And what I do is I take like one of these little powder puffs, and you'll kind of like do baking, where I find underneath my eyes, if I'm wearing concealer and I don't want it to crease, so I'll kind of do like this whole area because I also get oily right there. I do right across the bridge, and then a little bit on my forehead. I've seen some people do like here if you want kind of like that. And I was like, it does work really well for that. So I'll just show you how to do it on this side because we don't really need it on this one. And then another tip is that once it's on the powder puff, kind of like roll it into your hand. It kind of helps work it into there. You really don't lose a lot of product doing that, but I just find that it works in here really well. And then for the last step on this side, I like to finish with a setting spray, and you can really use any kind you like. I like to kind of revive the makeup and use a dewy setting spray. And today I'm going to be using the e.l.f. Power Grip Dewy Setting Spray. I know I kind of roasted that in my last video, but I have been really liking it. I still don't like the spray nozzle, like it is way too thin and too fine of a mist, but the product is just, it's so good. I really like it. I mean, you can kind of see how much I've been using, like kind of spraying on the powder side. I've tried doing that and I feel like it just really messes up the powder foundation. So you really just have to like leave it alone, and you can reapply throughout the day. So, and then this one you do have to shake first. That's another thing about this one. I feel like you have to use so much to get just like an even layer across. So I feel like that's kind of why I've been going through it so much, but it really is a nice finish. And then lastly, we're gonna go in with mascara. I suggest using like a waterproof one, especially if you're gonna be out all day or really sweaty. I personally am not a huge fan of waterproof ones. I like tubing mascara, so that's what I'm gonna be using today. But in the summer, I do recommend a waterproof one. Before you go, I have one last tip for you. If you're like me and you can't keep your eyelashes to hold a curl, so before I will go in with a eyelash curler, I will actually set it with powder. For some reason, I'll curl my eyelashes. I can do it like 30 times. I've tried so many different ways to do it. They won't. They just will not. They refuse. And this is the only way that works for me. So I'll take a setting powder. You can use a loose one too. It doesn't work as well, but I prefer just like one in a pan, and I'll lightly tap it with a small brush. And then what you're gonna do is you're gonna take your eyelash curler, you're gonna open it, and then line it on the bottom and the top. And I'll do that like 2 times just to make sure that there's a nice even coat, and then I'll redo it for each eye. All right, there you have it. Those are my tips to help your makeup last all summer long. Comment below if you have different hacks what you do to make your makeup last. I'll see you guys next time. Bye!